This is Kristen with Crossing Timbers Equine. In this educational video, we're going to go over the couple of different ways you can ask your horse to back. There's two ways that I prefer to do it. The first way is by wiggling the lead rope in front of me while the horse is standing facing me and asking them to back off of the wiggle. The second way I like to do it is by using my hand on the halter or the lead rope right underneath their chin so that I can direct and ask them to back up. There is a third way that some people will use, which is putting their hands up in the air and pushing and motioning the horse backwards. It's not a way that I use, so I will demonstrate it at the end, but you will be able to see that Nava's not quite sure what I'm asking, but she does kind of, I think, get it a little bit. So the first way we're going to show you how to back up is by using the lead rope and the wiggle. So we're going to get Nava set up here. I'm just going to bring her around. And ask her to stop. When practicing and working on the back, it's very important that you do it in small intervals. The back is not something that's easy for them to do. Ooh, good girl. So you want to do it a couple of minutes here, a couple of minutes there, 5-10 minutes, then move on to something else. Only do it about 5 or 10 minutes a day. Progressively work your way up to going to, instead of 5 to 10, maybe 10 to 15. But backing is hard for them, and it's not really a natural motion for them to do. So you want to make sure that you work your horse up to doing a lot of backing. Anytime we ask our horse to back, we want to make sure we're paying attention to where they are and where we are. In case they spook, they want to scoot forward. We don't want to be directly in front of them, off just to the side just a little bit. So that way then if we do start to see them come forward, we can move out of the way, hopefully in enough time. Whenever I ask my horses to wiggle, the first thing I want to do is address my lead rope. I like to use a 15-foot lead rope. It gives me enough room to ask them to do maneuvers, and I'm not restricted by 8 feet. If 15 feet is too much for you, absolutely use that 8-foot lead rope. It's whatever feels most comfortable for you and most comfortable in your hands. So the first thing I want to do is stand in front of her. I want to get her attention. I'm going to do a little wiggle. If she's a little slow, I might add my clucker to encourage her to back up. If she gets stuck, I'm going to move into her space and I'm going to increase that wiggle on that lead rope. Good girl. Now when I stepped into her space, that wasn't her moving my feet. That was me choosing to move my feet into her space. So if you imagine a bubble around me and a bubble around her, I was pushing my bubble into hers. Her bubble wasn't pushing into me and moving my feet. Now this would be an instance here where her bubble is pushing into mine. So I'm going to ask her bubble to move off of me. So it's very important to remember, you'll hear people say you can't move your feet because that's your horse moving your feet. But there's a big difference between when I decide to move my feet and push my bubble into them and when they're pushing their bubble into me and moving my feet that way. So now if I were to back up because she stepped forward, that would be her moving my feet. So we're going to do that again. We're going to stand in front, give a little wiggle. Nava doesn't come at things with a lot of excitement. Good girl. Ooh, good girl. So now I didn't ask her to step up there, so I gave her another wiggle. Anytime I ask her to back up, I'm going to wiggle until she moves and until I'm done. I'm going to make that wiggle bigger, I'm going to make that wiggle bigger. When I stop, then that's when she can stop. Good girl. Good girl. Now you can come here. Very nice. So I always want to make sure when I'm asking my horse to back up that I remain consistent in my cues. If I start to wiggle and she doesn't move and I quit, I just taught her that the wiggle doesn't mean anything because I didn't reinforce it and ask her to move off of that wiggle. So if I wiggle and she doesn't move, I've either got to make myself bigger, lifting up with my chest, opening up, making my wiggle bigger. Good girl. And then when I'm done, I quit with the wiggle with my hand, bring myself down and in. So that's the first way that I like to ask my horses to back up, is by doing the wiggle with the lead rope. Remembering that if they're not reacting to that wiggle, you need to step up and in, make yourself bigger, do whatever you need to do in order to make them move. The minute they move, the second they move, quit. And you can reward them by, good job, a pat, a rub, a scrub, and then ask again. Now, sometimes when I ask them to back, I might ask for 2 or 3 steps. Sometimes I might ask them to back up with 10 or 15 steps. It all depends on what I want at that moment, what I need, if I'm doing a certain pattern and I need them to step a certain number of steps backwards. The important thing to have them learn is that when I stop, they can stop. So as long as I'm still wiggling that lead rope, they still need to be moving backwards. Now, the second way that I ask my horses to back up is by using the lead rope and their halter directly under their chin to ask them to back up. So I'm going to pull back towards their chest with small little bumps and ask them to come back. I don't want to do just a solid grab and a solid pull, because anything that has solid pressure, they can pull against and they can put their own pressure against. Now, I don't care if you're the strongest man or woman in the world. Doesn't matter. There's no way you're going to outpull a horse that doesn't want to back up. So just really light, really soft bumps, asking them to back up. And my bumps don't stop until they back up and until I'm done asking them to back. So even when they get a little sticky, I don't increase. I just ask a little more. Good girl. And then I ask them to stop and wait for me. If you don't feel comfortable having your hand right down and under on the halter and you want to keep your hand lower on the lead rope, it's important to remember that you still come straight back towards that chest and you still bump with that lead rope. If I pull my hand off to the side, I'm going to turn her nose, which is going to turn her bum. If I come up this way, I'm going to turn her nose, and I'm going to turn her bum, and we're not going to get a straight back. So I want to make sure that I keep my lead rope straight down in the center of her chest so I can ask her to back up. Now, if she's backing up and she's starting to go crooked, let's see if I can make her go crooked by going crooked. There we go, a little bit. Then I can come back and I can adjust a little bit by going the other way to get her to straighten up. But I want to keep my hand as centered as I can the whole time through. Sometimes when horses back up, they start to get crooked, and the more you go, the more crooked they get. Remember to keep it nice and slow and steady. We want it 1 step at a time. Even though you may ask for 3 steps, I'm looking for step 1, step 2, step 3. So I approached it 3 steps at a time. We got 3 nice clear steps in order to ask her to go backwards. Now, an additional way that you can ask your horse to back up is by raising your hands up in the air and pumping. Now you can see that this has very little to no effect on Nava because this isn't something that I've done with them. So to her, this motion doesn't mean anything. Right, it doesn't mean anything. So what I might want to do, if I'd want to train her to back up that way, is get one hand going and ask her in a way that she knows. And then see if I can't pick. Nope. Good girl. Ooh. See if I can get her to go back a little bit. There you go. Good girl. Very nice. Come here. She's starting to get it a little bit. Let's get her straightened out here a little bit. She's a little crooked, so she might back crooked right from the get-go. So we're going to get her going. Do a little pump. You see I threw a little wiggle in there. Nope, stay here, Mama. A little wiggle to get her going. Back to the pump. Good girl. So you see, within a little bit of time, I could probably get her used to pumping with my hands to ask her to back up. For myself personally, it's just not a way that I'm used to, that I use with my horses. Like I said, I prefer the wiggle, and I prefer using the halter and the lead rope. One thing that I did forget to mention when asking your horse to back by using the halter and the lead rope is you don't want to choke up on that halter or lead rope. Whether you've got a rope halter on them or you've got a nylon halter, you don't want to grab it so tight that you're right up under that chin and choked up. If you watch my hand anytime I'm asking him to back, I'm at the very end of that line of the rope on the rope halter. And I keep my hand nice and loose and open because I'm not forcing them back. There's no force in that whatsoever. I'm just giving them a little bump, bump, bump and asking them to step back. Good girl. And move away. So it's the association with the movement of my hand, with the movement of that bump, asking them to back up.